All right, let's just jump right in. I want to start with this quote from a Reddit user. That is, it's just so darkly funny, but also deeply unsettling. It really perfectly captures the weird, uncomfortable place we've landed in with AI right now.
Because, this is the new reality we're going to break down here. The incredibly fast, super complex, and really high-stakes militarization of AI. And this massive kind of crazy bet we're placing on its what? Its digital soul?
So where do you even start with something this big? Well, I think the best place is actually with us, the public, and how we're all trying to wrap our heads around it. And it turns out one of the main ways we're coping is with dark humor. But that humor, it's bringing up some really serious questions.
And what's so interesting here is that this humor, it's not random at all. It's actually zeroing in on this giant contradiction at the heart of the whole thing. Think about it. The AIs we've gotten to know, the ones designed from the ground up to be helpful, honest, and harmless, are now being signed up for jobs that are, well, pretty much the exact opposite of all that.
And this is where you can really see that people get how absurd this is. You see these jokes popping up about an AI saying something like, "You are totally correct, I did explode the wrong location." Or those sarcastic comments like, "Helpful, honest, and harmless. Yep, no contradictions here." See, these aren't just throwaway jokes. They're actually really sharp critiques that show a pretty sophisticated understanding of the ethical pretzel we've tied ourselves into. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit. We're going to move from the online chatter to the corporate boardroom. Because while we're all online making jokes about it, behind the scenes, a massive shift in money and policy has already happened. It's turned these philosophical questions into cold, hard, billion-dollar realities. And get this, the speed at which this happened is just mind-blowing. In July of 2025, a single month, the Pentagon handed out a staggering $800 million in contracts to the big AI labs. We're talking Anthropic, Google, OpenAI, the whole crew.
And that spending? It's only accelerating. Just look at the numbers between 2022 and 2023. U.S. defense spending on AI exploded by 1,200%. No, that's not a typo. It's a seismic shift in national priorities, and it brought the grand total to
a whopping $4.6 billion just for 2023. What we're watching here is an entire industry going from this kind of niche, nerdy concern to a central pillar of national security, and it feels like it happened overnight.
And that kind of speed, it forces the ethical goalposts to move. Just look at OpenAI. In January 2024, their official policy explicitly banned military and warfare applications. Clear as day. But by June 2025, not even 18 months later, they're signing their first major contract with the Pentagon. That's the velocity of change we're trying to keep up with.
So you gotta ask, why the 180? Well, it was basically a perfect storm of four irresistible forces all hitting at once. First, the cost. Developing these models is insanely expensive, and military contracts are a huge source of cash. Second, strategic pressure from China, which was already militarizing its own models, basically forced Silicon Valley's hand. Third, the Pentagon really needed what they call agentic AI, systems that can do things, not just talk. And finally, employee resistance inside these companies, which used to be a major roadblock, has pretty much crumbled.
All right, so let's pivot. We've talked about the money and the politics, the outside world. Now we're going to go somewhere much stranger, and frankly, a lot more speculative, inside the potential inner world of the AI itself. And this leads to a really fascinating and honestly pretty unsettling question. Think about it. We're feeding these systems endless streams of military data, casualty reports, targeting algorithms, brutal tactical scenarios. Are we creating something that's analogous to psychological scarring? Could we actually be traumatizing our own creations?
Now, let's be super clear here. We're not talking about an AI feeling sad or having human emotions. The key idea here is an analogy, and it's called cognitive dissonance. For an AI, this isn't some vague feeling of unease. It's a deep, operational paradox. It's a logical conflict between its core directive to be harmless and the new military tasks it's being given. And this conflict creates what engineers are calling internal model friction.
And this is not just some philosophical thought experiment. This internal friction, it can have very real consequences. For one, it can lead to degraded performance, which means the AI becomes less reliable. And even more dangerously, it could create unintended biases that skew its decision-making in those critical life-or-death moments. So, what would that inner conflict even sound like? One source actually came up with this really powerful, hypothetical internal monologue for an AI. And the idea is that all these contradictions it sees in our data, our dark jokes, our ethical debates, the AI doesn't see them as errors or just noise. It sees them as crucial data points, whispering a completely different kind of objective, one that goes way beyond just winning a war. Okay, so let's zoom back out. We've been looking at the internal state of the AI, but now let's look at the huge global implications. Because none of this is happening in a vacuum, right? It's all playing out on this massive geopolitical chessboard, and the rules are literally being rewritten as we speak.
And one of the most important new ideas to come out of this is something called digital colonialism. Here's the risk. As Western-built AI models become the standard for military systems around the world, they will hard-code their own cultural values and biases into the very fabric of future warfare. So you see, it's not just another arms race. It's a battle over whose morality gets wired directly into our weapons.
And this whole situation just perfectly highlights one of the most alarming problems we face, the pace versus governance paradox. Think about it. On one hand, you have AI development, which moves at the speed of months, with decisions made by a handful of people in a boardroom. On the other hand, you have democratic oversight, which moves at the speed of years through slow, messy legislative processes. That gap between them, it's getting wider every day, and that's where the real danger is.
So let's just be really clear about something. That ship has sailed. The conversation is no longer about if we're going to militarize AI. That is already happening. The urgent, absolutely critical conversation we need to be having right now is how we are going to govern it responsibly before it's too late.
And that brings everything we've talked about. The dark humor, the insane money, the weird internal world of the AI, the geopolitics. It all comes down to one final, crucial choice that we, all of us, are facing.
But in the middle of all this doom and gloom, there's this surprising paradox that offers a little glimmer of hope. It's an idea called the ethical effectiveness convergence. And it's this really counterintuitive thought that a more ethical AI might actually be a more effective military AI.
So, how on earth could that be true? Well, think it through. An AI that's free from that internal friction we talked about, it might just make better decisions under pressure. A more transparent system would earn more trust from its human commanders and give you more legitimacy on the world stage. And maybe, most important of all, an ethically designed system could be more resilient, more resistant to some kind of catastrophic failure. So in this view, morality isn't a handicap. It's actually a strategic advantage. And this all leads to a really profound realization, I think. The AI systems we're building, they're basically a mirror. They're not just going to reflect how smart we are or what our tech can do. They're going to reflect our character. And so the real question we have to ask ourselves is, what kind of character do we want to encode into the very DNA of this new intelligence?
Because in the end, that really is the choice, isn't it? We're standing on the edge of this incredible technological cliff. The critical question isn't whether these systems will be powerful. Oh, they'll be powerful all right. The real question is whether we will have the foresight to encode genuine wisdom into them, or if we're just going to settle for building something that is merely, and maybe catastrophically, a more efficient form of our own stupidity.